The Edmonton Oilers are very much alive in the Stanley Cup final. A whole lot to break down. Let's get to work.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I want to thank everybody making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Before we get to today's show, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. The Edmonton Oilers are very much alive. And first segment, we'll touch base on Game 4, why it kind of had to happen that way, why it felt good just to get that. Regardless of anything else that happens, didn't get swept. We'll start there. Second segment, we'll talk about if there's anything that's particularly replicable or something the Oilers can look to maintain as the series goes along, trying to push that. And then third segment, real straightforward. We'll game out how likely it is they can actually pull this off and be the first team since World War II to come back from 3-0 down. So, Saturday night, spent most of my day watching Euros, watching Hungary and Switzerland, Spain, Croatia, and then Italy, Albania. Watched a good 6.5, 7 hours of soccer. And then my friends are like, what's on now? And I get to put the big smile on my face and rub my hands together and say, Stanley Cup Finals, McDavid, you guys want to watch? Sat there for 3 hours, watched the game, had a big smile on my face that the Oilers didn't get swept, and I wasn't going to have to do a depressing episode of this, recapping the season and kind of tying a bow on it. That was fun. Full stop. It was very fun. It was overdue for the Oilers to find some offense, and that's the big takeaway I have from the way the game went Saturday. Yeah, Florida pulls Bob at 5 goals. Florida very much got caught in the landslide, and there was nothing they could do there. There was not a recipe for Florida on Saturday night once that game got to 3-1, got to 4-1. You're not going to pull off that type of comeback barring something insane. So for Edmonton, you want to take a step back. Most of all, I'm happy for the people who were in the building on Saturday night. I'm happy for the guys on the team because the season's not over. And the stat they've brought up more than once, the one stat they kept bringing up on the ESPN broadcast, last time the Oilers lost 3 games in a row, they won 16 in a row. That's your not devil's advocate. That's your argument right now if you're an Oilers fan. If you want a reason to believe, they've won 16 games in a row this season. They only need to win 3 more in a row if they wanted to go all the way and pull off one of the great comebacks in the history of sports. And that's the thing here. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to talk about that more coming up in one of the later segments, the series at large. The game on Saturday, it unfolded the way the Oilers needed it to. And most importantly, they finally got a bounce. 3 whole games, it seemed like the Oilers couldn't get a single bounce to go their way. They couldn't get pucks. They couldn't get a puck past Bobrovsky to save their life. The Oilers could not get a puck past Bob to save their life in the first 3 games. Then they had a week's worth of positive regression hit them all at once. They probably won't score 8 goals combined between games 5 and 6 should they get to a game 6. But eventually you get a shot. I said this on Locked On NHL with Gil on Monday as well. Your one concern is now, did they score all the goals that were in them? Because as we've emphasized, they've had the puck a lot. You know, they've had slightly more shots on goal than Florida. Florida, I believe, has 4 more scoring chances. But the control of the game, puck, time on puck, whatever you want to use to describe it, the Oilers have certainly had their chances. The problem has been the fact that they've had to work really hard to create offense just because the way Florida is defensively, there's not a lot of room. You got to string together a lot of passes in a row to make one good scoring chance. The difference here on Saturday, Edmonton got some transition goals. You get the Janmark shorty, that kind of gets you in the game. You get the big save from Skinner on Carter Verhaeghe, that keeps you in the game. And then you get to work. You start getting into transition, making some stuff happen. You get the Draisaitl goal, that matters a lot. And at 3-1 at the end of the first period, you feel okay. It's like in Rocky IV when he makes Drago bleed. Okay, we can score on Bob. We did our job. We can score on Bob. Let's keep this going. And that was what was encouraging to me, is that not only did the Oilers get out to a lead, they kept piling on and piling on and piling on, because we've seen teams get comfortable leads. We've seen the Rangers do that against Florida. We saw Edmonton do that against Dallas in the last round, where they get out to a big lead. They stop really pushing offensively because they're more focused on not blowing the lead. And that's how you let the other team back in the game. If they have the puck a lot more than you, it's bad luck. It doesn't take a lot to go wrong for you to start conceding goals against, no matter what your lead is. So that was encouraging to me, that the Oilers were able to not only get out to a lead, they kept making it bigger. They found a way to keep putting pressure on Florida, to frustrate Florida. And you saw Florida getting frustrated. All the penalties, all the after the whistle stuff. Florida's entire recipe is predicated on goading you into doing stupid things. Edmonton did a nice job of not taking the bait, of taking a step back, level-headed, and just answering the moment. And I said this before, and I'll reiterate it again. Most of all, I'm happy for the people who went to the game on Saturday, because I know that playoff ticket anxiety is very real. You spend whatever you spend to get in the door, and instantly, the first time the other team scores, you're instantly having FOMO. You're having the worst of post-purchase clarity. Like, why did I do that? Gotta win, did not get swept. That alone is something to feel okay about. Now, of course, you want to win this series. And Edmonton, if anyone can do this, it's Edmonton. I'm not saying they're going to, but if anyone can pull off a 3-0 deficit comeback, it's the team with 2 of the 5 best players in the world on it. And you got a good recipe the other night. You got some power play goals for the first time in this series. That had been an issue for Edmonton. You got some good Skinner play. Skinner was really good on Saturday night, made a couple of really nice saves, including that one on Verhaeghe. And you got some bounces. Florida hits 2 posts on the sequence right before Janmark scores the shorthanded goal. And that really kind of gave the Oilers some juice. And when you are in this desperation mode that Edmonton is going to remain in as long as the season continues, you need any help you can get. So yeah, did they get a little bit lucky with the posts, with the saves, with some of the goals they got? They got Bob out of the net on the Janmark goal. Yeah, you need that. It's hard to win this time of year. Florida is a very good team. Take a moment, take a deep breath. Essential to not get swept. You want to keep the season going. Now it's a matter of, can we put some heat on Florida? Can we make Florida uncomfortable with the fact that we're getting our footing in this series? We're going to talk about that a whole lot more coming up next on Locked On Oilers, so be sure to stick around. These are very uncertain times, and life insurance gives you peace of mind for the unpredictable. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from all of America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process every step of the way. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, if you switch jobs, it may not come with you. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance policy with Policygenius. head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. I want to thank everybody listening to Locked On Oilers, whether it's at the start of your day, middle of your day, wherever. Glad you're along for the ride, and glad the Oilers ride is still going, man. You can't win if you're not still playing, and Edmonton playing the way they did on Saturday, highly encouraging. We talked about the power play goals. We talked about Skinner. We talked about finally getting a little bit of luck. You add all that together, and we're cooking. You need some stuff to go your way. And for 3 straight games, Edmonton couldn't get anything to go their way. They couldn't get Skinner to make a really good save. They couldn't score on the power play. McDavid hadn't scored yet. And it was tough sledding. It was about everything that could go wrong through 3 games had gone wrong. And they're dealing with injuries. Nurse isn't great, right? 100% right now. Evander Kane didn't play on Saturday because of the injury he's dealing with, which we've been told is a sports hernia, but the Oilers are going to need to pull off something miraculous here to keep this to pull this off. To keep this going, that's a little more feasible. You want to talk about, okay, let's get to game 5. Okay, what worked for us in game 4 that might be able to translate to game 5? The power play stuff is essential. The Oilers are not going to win against Florida most often if they're not scoring on the power play. The power play is supposed to be Florida's cheat code. It's supposed to be Edmonton's cheat code. It's supposed to be Edmonton's great equalizer. That's their thing. They are a great special teams team because they have elite talent. When you have the best player in the world to orchestrate your power play, you have an advantage that other teams don't. I've talked about this a lot. I'll repeat it again real quickly if you're new to the show. The reason Edmonton's power play is so dangerous is because their swing point, the puck goes through McDavid. Most teams, the puck goes through their point man, which is typically a defenseman. But because McDavid is such a good skater, they're able to change the fulcrum point of the power play, if you will, where it's wherever McDavid is. It's not necessarily the point. It's not the half wall. It's not the slot. It is wherever McDavid has space. And in turn, that gives room to other guys because the defense is going to respect McDavid's ability to skate, to pass, to shoot. That's how you get all the Zach Hyman tap-ins. That's how you get you get all that room for Evan Bouchard to step up into for a big slap shot from the point. It's because of McDavid's skating that all of those other opportunities are there. Number 2, I said this the other day, and I'll say it again now. You have got to get in the game. Scoring early, get your feet under you, get some confidence, and that matters. It really, the Oilers are a score effects team. When they get out to a lead, they are a lot better defensively than when they are playing from behind. They don't have a big margin for error. The more room you can give them to play with to figure it out, the more comfortable they are, the less scattered they are. And that's the big thing. When Edmonton's defense has had trouble in these playoffs, it's when they've been disjointed. It's when they've had to play more defense than they would probably like. They haven't been able to break out cleanly. And because they're playing with the lead, they got a little more breathing room. It's not that they're taking for granted that they have an advantage, but there's a lot less stress on you in a 4-1 game to make a good play than in a 1-1 game or in a game you're losing. You saw that earlier on in the series through the first 3 games. When Florida gets out to a lead, they really start to swarm you. They don't give you a lot of breathing room, force you into turnovers. Even Bouchard had a really rough game the other day, not game 4, but in game 3. The turnovers, if you are going to beat Florida, you got to be pretty close to perfect because they don't make a lot of mistakes. But Saturday, you did get them to make some mistakes. You had some breakaway opportunities. You had some scoring chances off of the rush, and you converted on the power play. Yeah, I know it was a 5-on-3, but you still had to score. You still had to score. You scored. That is encouraging. You are seeing signs of life. Now, your attention's going to shift to Tuesday night. Your attention's going to shift to, can we win one more game? Can we get back to Alberta? I know McDavid had said that after game 4, that our goal right now is to win one more game and drag this series back to Alberta. And I often talk about this principle with bad teams in the regular season down the stretch. Obviously, Edmonton is a good team. Obviously, this is the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, you want to win the Stanley Cup. If I'm Edmonton, spite is going to be a driving factor in this series. Even if Florida does go on to win, you want to make it as miserable as you can for them. Make them go back to Florida. Make them get back on a plane to Edmonton. Make them play another game. Make them play another game, because then you can start to say, let's get weird. All you got to do is get it to a game 6, and then all you got to do is one more, and then anything can happen in a game 7. It's the damnedest thing about these best of 7 series, that all you need is a little life, and the longer a series goes on, the more a team starts to believe they're capable of pulling it off. And Edmonton is a very good team. Edmonton arguably shouldn't be down 3-1 in this series. If you were gaming it out on fairness based on how they've played, Edmonton should have won game 1. This series should be 2-2 going back to Florida. Of course, that's not what happened. You got to score if you want to win. Expected goals according to who becomes waiting for Godot. But you're here. You have an opportunity now. Go back to Florida. Make them lose a game on home ice. Annoy their fans. Annoy them. Annoy Matthew Tkachuk. Annoy Sam Bennett. Annoy Carter Verhaeghe. Make those guys work for it. Even if you ultimately can't prevail in the series at large, get back to Alberta. Make something happen up in Edmonton, and then maybe we can start talking crazy. Got to get there first, though, and that's why you got to focus on just a game 5 right now. Game 5 is one game. 6 and 7 don't matter. You got to win tomorrow to get there. That's the key. You cannot get ahead of yourself. You can't start thinking, oh, well, if we can do this, we can get... You just need to win game 5. Florida is a very good team. I imagine they're going to be a little bit pissy about the fact they got 8-1 in the Stanley Cup final. They're going to have something to say about that. It is incumbent upon Edmonton to answer the bell. I talked about this last week going into game 3, the idea of being in the fire, and Edmonton have been in the fire quite a bit this season. They've answered resoundingly when they've really had no room for error. They did that on Saturday. We're going to find out if they can do it again, because they're probably not putting 8 past Bob again. Now, they get a bunch of power play opportunities. Bob starts hearing ghosts. Then maybe we could talk about something. We're 2 years removed from Sergei Bobrovsky being so bad he was benched in the playoffs. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying it is in the realm of possibility that you see Bobrovsky revert back to some bad habits where it's easier to beat him. He's a little bit less consistent, and you 8-1 him. You 8-1 a goalie, that's in their head. Now, Bob's an all-time guy. He's probably more likely than not entirely over game 4. He's kind of put it to bed in his head. He knows what he needs to work on. You get a goal early in game 5. You get 2 early in game 5. You really put some heat on Bobrovsky. That's something. Then we're changing the calculus of the series. Coming up next, we're going to take one more quick break, and then we're going to talk about how we get to a game 6. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and the Stanley Cup Finals, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. If you were so curious, the Edmonton Oilers are plus 114 on the money line for game number 5. So if you bet $100, you would win $114 on that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you to everybody listening to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. It's been a very fun ride going along with Edmonton on this journey as this team pursues its first Stanley Cup since the 90s. And I don't want this journey to end. And that means the Oilers got to keep winning. There is no margin for error in the macro. And a given game, sure, you get out to a lead, you turn a puck over, you give a goal, whatever. That's fine. Getting to a game 6 is not going to be easy. Florida is an emotion team. They're an energy team. They can sneak up on you in a heartbeat. They score very quickly, as we all saw last Thursday in game 3, where they were all over the Oilers. They scored 3 goals in about 6 real minutes of game time, and that was ultimately the game. Yeah, Edmonton put together a nice comeback. They got the score line to look respectable, but you're getting close to whatever it takes mode now. You are in the kitchen sink mode. You are in that desperation. And desperation is a powerful motivator in the sports world, because there are a lot of guys on that team, on the Oilers, I'm saying, that realize they might not get back here for a while, that it is hard to make a Stanley Cup final. It's even harder to get back. We don't see teams make multiple cups in the same window and not win them. You know, Tampa Bay is different. Pittsburgh is different. You go back and look at recent Stanley Cup final history, you don't have repeats. Tampa Bay is your exception. Pittsburgh is your exception, but those teams won. You look at some of the teams that have lost, it's taken a little while to get back up. You talk about Florida last year, all-time miracle run, 5 or 6 overtime wins, Bobrovsky playing out of his mind. To get back there this year, that's something that's really, really special. The year before that, Colorado and Tampa Bay. Colorado had not been to a cup final in a while. Tampa Bay obviously has not been back since then. Tampa Bay had gone to the previous 2. Montreal, lottery team. Dallas took a step back before they took a leap, and they're still looking to get back to a Stanley Cup final for the first time in 2019. Bruins have not made a Stanley Cup final since then. The Blues have not made a Stanley Cup final since then. You go to Washington. Vegas did go on and win a Stanley Cup, but it took them 4 or 5 years to get back there. Washington has not made a conference final since then. You go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh hasn't won a playoff series since 2017. They have not won a playoff series since incorrect. They haven't won a playoff series since 2018 because they lost to Washington on the way to Washington going on to win the Stanley Cup. I want to make sure I get that right. And then Nashville, San Jose, either of those teams obviously have not been back. The Blackhawks have not won a playoff series in God knows how long against the Lightning, who it took 5 years to get back to the Stanley Cup final after getting there in 2015. The point being, the Oilers probably won't be back here for a little while. You still have something here. You still have a very special group here. You have a team that played .670 winning percentage hockey most of the season. You got Knobloch in there and entirely changed the complexion of the team. And I'm not ready to announce the Oilers dead. I know there are a lot of people rejoicing at watching Connor McDavid struggle because he's not on their team. Same thing with Draisaitl and the Oilers at large. There are a lot of people who don't like the Oilers because they were in the lottery for so long. They can't put a good team around them. And it's petty jealousy. Every single person in the league wants Connor McDavid on their team. Every single person in the league wants Leon Draisaitl on their team. Every time those people are dumping on the Oilers and the roster and Ken Holland in a non-constructive way, that is them telling you, I'm jealous your team is better than mine. And I know there are a lot of Ranger fans who are, all we had to do was beat Florida and we would have walked to the Stanley Cup. And you can't look at it like that because you don't know. That's the big frustration I have with the hypothetical world. And sports invites itself to the hypothetical, but we've got to take a breath. We've got to look at everything as it lies and say, it is 3-1. The Oilers are going to need to win 3 straight games. What does their recipe look like to do that? They are almost assuredly going to need at least 1 power play goal per game, if not more than that. They are going to need Stuart Skinner to be as good as he was on Saturday, as opposed to what he was in, say, Game 3 or in Game 1. The Oilers need everything they can get to go their way right now. They are not going to have the benefit of last change down in Florida. That is an issue. That is something the Oilers have struggled with at times. In the Vancouver series, not having last change, Vancouver able to hard match a little bit better. They did okay against Dallas when they didn't have the choice of last change, but you're going to need, and I said this with Gil on Locked On NHL, and I'll say it now, the Oilers' recipe is predicated on their stars being the best players. They need McDavid, they need Draisaitl, they need Bouchard, they need Hyman. They get those 4 guys going, then we're talking about a heat check. And the Oilers are very capable of going on a very crazy heat check here. If any team can get hot enough to win 4 straight games in this environment against a team as good as Florida. It's Edmonton. I'm not saying they're going to, but they absolutely have the capabilities. They have the talent. They have the recipe, if you will. High-level talent outplaying the other team's high-level talent. And Edmonton's depth is giving them offense this series. You know, you got a Holloway goal, Henrique, you got Janmark. You get depth scoring like that, it buys you time. It gives you more margin for error for your star players to get going. And that's the key here. The Oilers have gotten that secondary scoring that we thought would be the question mark for them in this series. They haven't had the star power goals. They need to get McDavid and Draisaitl going. And it was good to get them on the sheet on Saturday night for some goals, few assists. That stuff is great. They're going to need to have one of their take over the game type performances to keep this series going more than likely. Because I imagine game 5, a lot tighter, a lot less room, a lot more defense, and it's going to come down to a handful of plays. And against Florida, they have a funny way of being able to win on those handful of plays because of the style they play, not necessarily because of the talent. It's not to say Florida's untalented, but they are not nearly as dynamic, explosive as, say, Edmonton is when Edmonton's humming at full speed. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Got a crossover edition with Armando coming for you guys ahead of game number 5 tomorrow. So that'll be something to look forward to on your feeds. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. Let me know. You think we got any shot? Any shot at all? We'll see. That's why they play the games. I will talk to you guys tomorrow with Armando. Until then, let's go Oilers.